Hi, thanks for watching Turn to the Stars. My name is Andrea Klim, and today I am going to be talking about the new moon in Pisces that just occurred a couple days ago. And today is March 4th, and that new moon occurred on March 1st. This past Saturday. So I'm going to be overviewing that energy, and I'm also going to be talking about what a retrograde looks like, why planets appear to be going retrograde, which is in a very different motion than the normal forward motion. And I'm going to talk about the Saturn's retrograde date. Saturn just went retrograde on Sunday, and it's been a really unbelievable period of time with the retrogrades of the planets and the way they have sequentially gone into this motion, and as one comes out another one goes in, and it really does, we really do feel the effects of this. So I do have a timeline that I'm going to show you for Saturn's retrograde. And then I have something really exciting, which is some really great images of all of the 8 planets from Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Each one of those planets, I'm going to give you a real nice image of the patterns that each of those planets form over time in our universe. So that's a really exciting thing. But first, I do want to talk about this new moon cycle that started on March 1st. That new moon in Pisces, truly, that we had, truly is a marker of a theme that is carries the theme of being the end of a period of certain experiences that we've been having that have brought great change into our lives. March is always the last month of our astrological year, where the energy of Pisces, which is the energy of dreams, of the things that we're the most sensitive about, the things that sort of bring these very sensitive undercurrents into our lives. But it's also a time, this month, Mars is really a month of finishing up things that we've already been under the process or in the process of change with. So it is really a month about finishing things up. So if, for instance, if this new moon in your astrology or soul chart, birth chart, triggered certain planets in your chart, you would be experiencing some real, there would be some real strong, very sensitive influences this month. So very important to understand the roots of what's underneath all of that emotion and sensitivity. So I do have a new moon. I'm going to put that up on the screen right now. This is the chart of the new moon that occurred last Saturday, March 1st, and you can see where that blue arrow is pointing, which is right to the sun and the moon together, joined together in the constellation of Pisces. Very powerful. New moons are very powerful because they are what we call lunations. New moons, full moons are very powerful energetic markers, as the moon is the closest body of energy to us here on Earth, and all planets revolve around the sun. So when the sun and the moon come together or oppose each other on a full moon, it is time that we feel, this is the time we feel these influences the most. And so when there is a new moon, such as this new moon in Pisces, it does bring or begin the building of a new form that delivers us experiences of a new nature. This particular new moon in Pisces paints a picture for us that we are walking on a very narrow path in our pursuit for understanding. And so this month there's this growing theme that we can see through illusion. And, it does remind us of, the things that we believe in, especially when it comes to values and our sense of worth. This new moon chart does show us that for us to be separate, or for us universally to be greedy or to take violent actions, is not the way to run the world, especially on the cusp of the age of Aquarius. This new moon chart really does show us that we need to all do what we can to adjust to change. And we can see that continued presence of this adverse energy, which is very difficult, that we're all experiencing in the area of changing the very structures of our life. The American family, the families of the world, the different families, the different cultures. There's many differences that we are seeing at this time, especially between Russia and the difficult things that are occurring over there with the Ukraine. And it is not a great time for any type of war or aggressive type of actions to occur. As we can see on that chart, Venus is in a square to Mars, and as you've heard me talk about on past shows, Mars retrograde is not a time for anybody to take action which is of an aggressive nature. Mars in Libra is, while it is retrograde, is the best way to use that energy is to negotiate things, look for peaceful resolutions. So for us as a world to be united, to sanction anyone who tries to engage in war is something that we're really challenged with at this time. And the relationships of the governments, which is the Venus in Capricorn. Capricorn is very much a status-oriented, very much a business-focused type of energy. And that glue that binds us together with Venus in Capricorn squaring Mars is showing that that square has occurred, I think, at least 3 times. By March 10th, we're going to see that give us some relief. But until then, relationships and the aggressions that we're feeling worldwide are a real challenge, and we need to be really careful on the actions that are taken in this area. So this new moon in Pisces does really see us as a whole, unconditionally, taking a look at the relationships we have with other countries on a universal level, really looking at things from a standpoint, being very compassionate and understanding of how we can really, as a whole, work together rather than fight, and especially over anything that has to do with boundaries. Boundaries are important. There's no doubt about it. However, Mars and Libra, very important that we do take whatever action we can to embrace peace. And whatever way that, or whatever form that takes, that is really the best resolution. The full moon on March 16th does bring this light of awareness of how much the little things matter that we do to help each other every day. That full moon will be in Virgo, and full moons always bring to light, they bring a huge awareness around things that are stimulating us emotionally, and we learn a lot through that. So I do think that we will have some relief around some of this aggression by the time this full moon comes. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about retrograde planets. And as seen from Earth, all the planets appear to periodically switch direction as they cross the sky. Though all stars and planets appear to move from the east to the west on a nightly basis in response to the rotation of the Earth. The outer planets generally drift slowly eastward relative to the stars. This motion is normal for the planets, and so it is considered a direct motion. However, since the Earth completes its orbit in a shorter period of time than the planets outside its orbit, it periodically overtakes them like a faster car on a multi-lane highway. You've got multiple lanes. So when this occurs, the planet being passed will first appear to stop its eastward drift and then drift back and towards the west. So then as the Earth swings past the planet in its orbit, it appears to resume its normal motion west to east. So that is an explanation of what is happening when we see a planet go retrograde. The sun and the moon are considered luminaries. They do not move in that, we do not see them take that motion, but all the other planets do. And currently we have Mars retrograde, which was what I discussed on the last show, and that's going to last all the way till about May 20th. The next planet that went retrograde, which was this past Sunday, was Saturn. And Saturn, I have a diagram that shows you a timeline of what this is going to look like, and there it is. So starting November 26th of 2013, from that time until March 2nd, which was this past Sunday, we have the experience or the energy of Saturn providing us with a shadow of what will be going back over again. And that timeline with Saturn's retrograde, which is when Saturn retrograde begins, which was March 2nd, this past Sunday. Now, starting March 2nd was when Saturn's retracing began. Saturn would be going back over the same area it had traveled from November 26th through March 2nd. So from March 2nd through July 21st is the time that the retracing or the revisiting of Saturn's energy takes place. That's the retrograde. And then from July 21st, when the retrograde ends, the planet stations and begins to move in what we call a forward motion. This after shadow begins, meaning that we're going to travel over the same area of energy for the third time. So this is a time where it solidifies. Energy solidifies. We have what we call an after shadow that occurs with Saturn. By the time we reach October 27th of this year, I call that we are past the shadow and new things are coming into light that will begin. Now, it's interesting because Saturn is the planet that brings to light responsibility and the structures of our life, the things that we are being asked to work on restructuring. And so during the period when Saturn is transiting in its retrograde, it is important that we do go back and assess and solidify our commitments that we've made, the projects that we've started, and the responsibilities that we've undertaken from the past. So this has to be done before we can go forward. So during a retrograde, that's what we're doing. Saturn, the retrograde provides us with the opportunity to reassess what we've taken on, to finally say no, and and to back out of commitments and to improve the organization of a project. So if you've taken on too much, if you've overdone something, while Saturn's retrograde, it takes you back over those things so that you can sort of sort them out and decide what you can actually on this earth be structurally responsible for. What makes sense? What are the facts? Saturn's a planet that is, sort of harsh. Its energy is sort of harsh in that way. If we look at the planet, it actually has a ring around it. The physical appearance of it has a ring around it, so it sort of protects us. It provides us with the energy of limitation, reminds us what we can do, what we cannot do. It reminds us of the rules and the regulations. So while the retrograde process is going on, while you're working with what you have, you should be aware of taking on any new responsibilities or long-range commitments. Saturn does rule over business, but while it's in the constellation of Scorpio, it is really helping us to sort out things that or patterns that we've become stuck in, possibly patterns that are really not good for us. Work on developing a sort of detox program in order to transform our lives. So, should only deal with old things from the past. Be aware of not taking on new things, new commitments. Saturn's retrograde does give us the opportunity to go back, reorganize, renegotiate any activities or commitments that seem to be a source of frustration. So really weed out the source of frustration while Saturn is retrograde. And that really is March 2nd through July 21st. And remember how much you can do before you start to feel frustrated. Saturn has a good way of reminding us of that. Trapped or confined, and draw the line by saying no before you reach that point. So really take a good factual look at these areas of your life. While Saturn is retrograde, it's important that you do not start any new business activity. Look at what you have already. Look at the structure of that. Look at what works, what's not working. There is an emotional piece to this whole thing because Scorpio is a water sign, and it's a very strong water sign, and it does help us to look at the mysteries behind the things that we're not clear on right now. I was about to take on another business responsibility yesterday, and I realized that, I really can't do that at this time. It's too much for me. It would probably really stress me out. So I said, you know what, why don't we do that later on, maybe this summer? And I think that would be a much better time, especially if you're somebody who's a Capricorn. This period of Saturn retrograde, if you have Capricorn or Saturn ruling your birth chart, meaning the ascendant, or you have any planets in the constellation of Capricorn in your birth chart, you really would find it in your best interest to be cognizant of this period of time, especially with that strong rulership of Saturn influencing you innately in your life, in your birth chart. So while Saturn is retrograde, you'll find that there's a lot of reorganization that has to be done before any successes can be made. Again, March 2nd through July 21st, Saturn's retrograde will slow down the normal rate of activity so that the best methods and strategies can be developed. So look at those methods, look at the strategies, look at your worth ethics. Look at the things that, especially around your money or the money that you owe to other people, or organizations or companies, banks, lending institutions. Scorpio has a very strong influence in all those areas, and it does rule the physical structure in life. It produces the rules and the regulations by which we structure our lives. So, also, Saturn allows us to redefine our boundaries. So very important that if there's something that you're starting to feel a little bit anxious about, that you take a look at why you're feeling that way. Very, very important. Not a good idea, as you heard me say before, to start a business while Saturn is retrograde. Really go back and take a look at things that you can really do in a different way or perfect. That's really going to be in your best interest. Saturn retrograde is really the best time to redefine your limitations and what you are already responsible for and perfect it. So now I want to take a look at the different patterns that each of the planets that I talked about earlier, starting with Mercury. I actually have a picture. That's Mercury's pattern. This is the pattern that Mercury draws in our universe over a period of 2 years. Actually, about 3 or 4 times every year, Mercury goes retrograde. And while it is retrograde, it forms one of those loops that you saw on the screen, because it retraces a particular area of a constellation. Venus's patterns, and this is the Venus pattern right here, and this is actually the pattern, this rose pattern, that Venus draws in our universe over a period of 8 years. And actually man has copied these particular patterns throughout time. They've seen, they've watched, they've mapped out the actual motion that these planets take and the path they take and the pictures that they draw, and they have actually copied these actual patterns into different cathedrals and churches in the world. So you saw that on the last show with Mars retrograde. The next pattern I'm going to show you is the pattern that Mars draws in our universe over a period of 16 years. Now you see these loops are a little bit bigger than the Venus loops. Mars is, it takes actually 2 years for Mars to go through the whole constellation. So this pattern, you can see the loops are a little bit bigger. And Mars is on the right side of the Earth. It's one of our neighboring planets, and so is Venus. They're the closest bodies of energy to us here on Earth. So it's very similar to, think about where you live, your home, and your neighbors. Mars is a neighbor. Venus is a neighbor. Our closest neighbor is the moon. That's why we're such very emotional creatures. And so it's kind of interesting to think about the planets in this way, because that is actually the fact. They are our neighbors. Those are our 2 closest neighbors. Mars, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So you've heard those things before. So let's look at the next pattern. The next planet out is Jupiter. The pattern that Jupiter draws in our universe over a period of 24 years. That's actually 2 cycles around the zodiac of, it takes about 12 years for Jupiter to go through all the constellations. But this is actually the pattern that it draws in our universe over 24 years. That's 2 years. Period of 2 years. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system, the next planet out from Mars. So it is like a neighbor 2 houses down rather than right next door. And Jupiter actually was retrograde coming into 2014, and so was Venus. And Venus's retrograde ended at the end of January, and the very next day, Mercury went retrograde. So we've had some of our closest planets go in this retrograde motion, and now Mars started in that motion on March 1st, and March 2nd, Saturn. So we have a lot of internal things going on worldwide with everyone. So the next planet out is Saturn. And this is the planet I was talking about earlier. And the pattern that Saturn draws in our universe over a period of 29 years is this pattern. Each loop is representative of a retrograde. And the next planet that goes retrograde, or that I have a pattern to show you of, is Uranus. And that's the next planet outside of Saturn in our solar system. And this is the actual pattern it draws in our universe over a period of 84 years. We are getting very distant. This is a far out neighbor, somebody that's probably in a different state. You might think of it in that way. Uranus is the planet that helps us to awaken, to change. And the next planet out is Neptune. Neptune is very, very far away. It might be like someone who would be a neighbor in a distant country. You consider its energy in that way. And this is the actual pattern that Neptune draws over a period of 164 years. Each one of those loops represents a retrograde period, and it lasts for about 5 months. Pluto. Now, this is, you can see that whole outside circle, every single one of those loops, there is 246 of them, and that is the pattern that Pluto draws in our universe over a period of 246 years. The farthest on the other side of the world, we could consider that planet's energy in that way. Pluto is very, very powerful. When you're in a Pluto transit, you know it. Our country, our world is currently experiencing both a Pluto, a Uranus, some real structural change. Very powerful transformations are we're experiencing because of these faraway planets forming, connecting with each other. So actually, Pluto and Uranus are having a difficult time getting us all to realize that change is absolutely necessary, and things are, for us to be experiencing evolution and a continued structural change in our lives every single day is exactly what should be happening. So I want to say thank you to everyone for watching Turn to the Stars, and remember, turn to the stars. You'll find your answers there. Take good care. I'll see you next week.